And Mr. Flynn, I will give you the same piece of information. The committee has vetted the information that Mr. Flynn has given us, and we're just dealing with information. Now we want your comments and your concerns. And based upon the information that you will receive from Mr. Flynn, he will give you an overview of what exists, some of the issues that have occurred, and more than anything else, some pros and cons that exist for us. And so, Mr. Flynn.
And you have a handout, if you have it, I've lost the computer, but it's okay. So the first, that's okay, Brian, it's fine. I don't need to throw that. The first question for the city is which county it would choose as the target to become a town of. That's the first thing you would decide. And you wouldn't just flip a coin to do that with with a three-headed coin. You would hire, typically when a city is doing this process, they hire economists, financial advisors, demographics folks, and then of course lawyers, and none of those people are cheap. None of those people are inexpensive. So the city would spend a year anyway, I think, deciding what its plan would be for reversion, which county it would choose to become a part of, and that would be the first step. And there is the possibility of the town being split into 2 or 3 counties. I would think that would be disaster for the citizens of Petersburg myself, because the easy example to show why is that if Petersburg became a town in Dinwiddie County, then more than half of the population of the county would live in the town of Petersburg, and it would be a strong voting bloc. But if this Petersburg was divided into 3 counties, well, the folks who were in Chesterfield County say it's, because it's 32,000 population, right? Yeah. So, 10,500 people are in the town of Petersburg part that is in Chesterfield that has 300,000 people. There'd be no voice whatsoever for those folks. So, in my mind, it would be you choose one county. And I'll just be pretty frank, I'm not putting this up unless you all particularly want me to. I'm happy to, but you all want it up?
So you want to see, you want to listen. Okay.
Okay.
They'll ask.
Yeah, and so then it seems to me ultimately Chesterfield becomes the only legitimate candidate, because if it's Dinwiddie County, again, as I say, Dinwiddie has 5,000 fewer citizens than Petersburg, so Petersburg would be the voting strength for that county. And the South Boston case, that was the first reversion case that cost South Boston and the county a lot of money, because the county did not want South Boston to impact its demographics for the voting. And so anyway, that would be a real issue. That would be so Dinwiddie. If I were Dinwiddie County, I would fight it tooth and nail, and that would mean a lot of expense. So plus, when you end up, Dinwiddie County would be responsible for operating the Petersburg school system, and they just don't have the economies of scale. They don't have the capacity for that. And I don't mean to demean. I don't mean to criticize Dinwiddie. It's just a reality. I'm sorry. And so, okay, the city first then goes through the work to decide with using experts to decide which county it will become a part of. And then the city actually starts a proceeding before the Commission on Local Government, and you have to have all of your information. You got to prove your case to the Commission on Local Government, and the county tries to prove, well, you're completely wrong. And you spend a lot of money, again, with the financial advisors, economists, land use experts, other demographics folks, other experts and attorneys. You take it to the commission, the county answers, and then the commission proceeding, in this case, it would not surprise me that it would take 2 years to complete the commission proceeding. And then the commission makes a series of recommendations for the conditions of the reversion. And so then you get through that, and then the city prepares for a proceeding before the circuit court. Enough time has passed, and I talked with, it's actually the attorney that does a lot of the city work around the state, been doing it for years, about this, that in his experience, that so much time passes that by the time you get ready to go to circuit court, you really have to refresh all of that data and all of that expertise because of the changes that have happened in the 3 years since you developed it, which means you have that expense of developing it a second time, really a second and a half time, because you put it together initially, but even before you really stool up for the Commission on Local Government. The city then has to, there are procedural steps. The city passes an ordinance, the proceedings begin. It's a special court. It's three circuit court judges appointed by the Supreme Court. And the court holds hearings on the reversion. It makes findings of conditions and orders the reversion with a set of conditions. And those conditions are pretty extensive, but the conditions are that the court has to find the proposed change from city to town status will not substantially impair the ability of the adjoining county in which the town will be located to meet the service needs of its population. The proposed, and again, that's where Dinwiddie and Prince George would really have a lot of good evidence that they don't have the capacity to take on that city, the town. The proposed change from the proposed change from city to town status will not result in substantially inequitable sharing of the resources and liabilities of the town and the county. The change in the balance of equities is in the best interest of the city, the county, the Commonwealth, and the people of the county and the city. The proposed change is in the best interest of the Commonwealth of promoting strong and viable units of government. And then the court shall have authority to impose such terms and conditions as it deems appropriate to adjust financial inequities, balance the equities between the parties, and ensure the best interests of the city, the county, the Commonwealth, and the people of the county and the city. And so you could imagine that would be a lot of hearings, a lot of argument, and a lot of work to get to that decision. The proceeding in circuit court and that special court could easily could take 2 years without a lot of effort. It could take 2 years to get there. So, so then, in the South Boston case, the conditions that the special court set were so onerous on the proposed town of South Boston that the town was forced to go to the Supreme Court to appeal those conditions, and that the special court has exceeded its jurisdiction. The Supreme Court gave them some relief, but of course a trip to the Supreme Court is not a cheap trip. You know, so that costs them more money. It's interesting that the most recent reversion was the city of Bedford becoming the town of Bedford, and there, you know, there's the composite index which identifies how much state funding you get for education. Well, the composite index was for getting more money was more favorable, was lower for the city than it was for the county. As a result of which, when the county took on the new town's students, it got, I think it was $3 or $4 or $5 million a year extra state funding. So the county said, and there, everybody in Bedford County understood that they go to Bedford. You know, they go downtown to go shopping. I mean, it wasn't anything odd. As you all know, citizens of Chesterfield, there are citizens of Chesterfield that probably don't come to Petersburg once every 10 years. Because it's a big county, people live way out, you know, and Swan Quarter, wherever that is up there on 360.
Skin Quarter.
Skin Quarter. Swan Quarter, whatever. Swan Dive. I went through there the other day. So anyway, I didn't do a swan dive when I did. And so, in any event, you know, with that in Bedford, it made sense to everybody involved, and there was no real fight. As you all can anticipate, there'd be a terrific fight here. Obviously, for the counties, the racial demographics issues would be, from the county's perspective, sad to say, would be a major impetus for why they would fight. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, it's a reality. So, okay, some of the conditions that will be almost guaranteed to have. One is that the city would retain its debt and have to pay for its, have to figure out a way to pay its debt. The citizens of the town would have two taxes, just like every other town. If you live in a town in Virginia, you pay full freight county tax and you pay the town tax on top of it. Well, so there would be this town tax, which is much smaller, that then would be required to obligated to pay for the debt. And right now it's 19 million or pushing 19 million. So, you know, that'd be a challenge, it'd be an issue. But then the city schools become county schools. The city school board is gone. Now there may be somebody on the school board who would then be, you know, on the county school board. There may be somebody from the city who's on the county school board. But your voice in your schools would be reduced significantly, especially with Chesterfield, where they have 40 some.
They have more children in school than we have citizens.
Right. So you know so Petersburg schools would lose that independent voice. That's just the way. The Petersburg constitutional officers would cease to serve, and the county constitutional officers assume all those duties. The court operations would probably move out of the town of Petersburg altogether. They may have a court here, you know, that's possible. I mean, you know, I think and even in Richmond, they have a Manchester courthouse that they still use. So that's a possibility. But you may find that when you have to go to court, that you'd have to go up to the court complex in Chesterfield County. The town would be responsible for street maintenance. The town would the town would have a police department. They probably, unless there was an agreement, there would be responsibility for garbage collection, water sewer service. Now with the regional water and sewage sewer authorities that exist here, you know, there may be some negotiating a change there. But if there was a change in the water, for example, Petersburg currently has a fairly strong informal, I guess it is, allocation of water rights to the water produced by the Appomattox Regional Water Authority, and you know, you wouldn't want to lose that. But if there was a push for the town to lose that capacity, that would really be harmful for economic development. So there would be a reduced there'd be significant reductions in necessary expenditures by the town. Of course, you wouldn't be running a school system. That's the big expense. Fine, what?
Due to my fire department.
Fire department. Well, but you may or may not lose the fire department. That's not a given. That would be subject to negotiation and be a part of the process. It'd actually be a part of the process in court. When I talked with the experts who do this stuff, and I've been involved in proceedings not on reversions but on voluntary settlement agreements. And then if you go through that route, go down that road, you're stuck. You're not going to do any more changes. You're not going to become a city again. That ain't going to happen. And you're not. The city, the town, the city can reject the court's decision. Just say, well, no thanks. But the point is, the problem is, the rub is that in order to get to that point where the court has issued a decision, the city could expect to spend $1.5 to $2 million in total expenses for the experts and the attorneys to get there. And so, you know, it'd be pretty tough to just then walk away from doing it. So that's the process for reverting. You go to the Commission on Local Government with all of your evidence. You refresh your evidence. You go to the special court. The court makes its decision. If you don't like that, you can go to the Supreme Court. and then it can go back to the special court. And then you have this new set of realities where you are responsible for the debt, the citizens are responsible for the debt, there's no school system, you will have a police department, you may or may not have a fire department, garbage collection, those things, street maintenance. So I think I've explained it. I think that's pretty much what happens in the reversion process.
Could we clear one thing about the constitutional officers? If we would not any longer have the constitutional officers, but if the change takes place before their appointments are finished, will we still have to pay would the town still have to pay the portion of their office expenses
To the county.
to the end?
It'd be just like any other citizen in the county. Each taxpayer, each citizen of the town of Petersburg would pay that share, the cost of the constitutional officer. Yeah.
Okay. Even though we no longer would have those
You would have
positions?
your own.
That's right.
So you wouldn't be paying for the city's treasurer, commissioner, revenue, clerk, sheriff, almost none, but you'd be paying your share of this county's.
Okay, all right. That's a lot of information. We now would like to see how you feel about it, all right? I'm sure that there, wait.